Welcome, Karthik. Welcome, Urmi Mendirata. Welcome, Mafti. Welcome, Ahmed. Welcome, Amika. Welcome, Marianne. Welcome, Arslan. Welcome, Tushi. Welcome, Afroz. Welcome, Can. Welcome, everyone. We will wait for another 4 to 5 minutes and we'll start at 5 p.m. Thank you. Welcome, Yasir. Welcome, Sudipto. Welcome, Arich. Welcome, Bilgite. Welcome, Pinaki. Welcome, Mohammed Farhan. Welcome, Mr. Krishna. Welcome, Heidi.
All right. Savan, should we get started in the next 1 or 2 minutes?
Yes, we will start in a couple of minutes, Mr. Suresh. Thank you all for joining. We'll just start in 1 minute. Thank you. Welcome, Osama. Welcome, Mr. Chandak.
Sound, get started. Perfect time.
All right, so this is it, the masterclass on solution selling by the Richardson Sales Performance, the global leader of sales training and performance improvement, organized by Imarticus Learning, one of the fastest growing organizations in the edtech industry. I heartily welcome all of you, and I would like to invite Mr. Suresh Rao, the Executive Director at Imarticus Learning, to take it on from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Savan. Pleasure to see you all today evening. This is Suresh Rao. I'm part of the overall Imarticus Learning as an organization. Maybe a quick introduction from my side and the firm, and then I'll pass it on to Tim, and likewise with Sandeep on Richardson Sales. So a little bit of Imarticus for everybody's benefit. Now, we are a global education company. We specialize in basically digital skills, sales and behavioral skills. We specialize across financial services, business analytics, technology, fintech, and digital marketing. And we're excited to bring upon sales-specific skill sets in the market of Middle East and North Africa. Again, we work with various clients across the Middle East and North Africa market, right from banking sector to universities, colleges, to even logistics space. Right now, we are established in Dubai in Middle East region. We have an office there, and we intend to deliver a lot of these sessions either online or classroom, or in the best part of it is blended. In terms of our overall expertise, we pride ourselves in making sure that we're absolutely ready in terms of the applied future ready skills. So a lot of our trainings that we see across finance, banking, fintech, data analytics, AI, ML, cybersecurity to cloud engineering, a lot of our focus is also on the digital skills. But what we've seen extensively in the Middle East space is that there is a market which is sales training, which we believe is almost like a taken for granted training. Every organization with its strong sales force builds a huge amount of revenue for the firm. The idea is, we look for partners, and we are honored enough to partner with Richardson Sales. They are the top 5 global companies in terms of sales training specifically, and they've got rich expertise around that. So we believe that Richardson Sales, its content, the global trainer network, and Sandeep is pretty much part of that, is ability to kind of connect to the crowd here. And we are more than happy to have further conversations post this particular webinar, whether this sales training and the solutioning selling as a concept would actually be a lot more value add while we kind of do that training for you all. In terms of Richardson Sales, so maybe a quick introduction. I'm sure Tim will do a great job on that. But a quick round of introduction on Richardson Sales. As I said, they are a global leader in sales and performance improvement. They've serviced about close to 900 plus global clients. They're based out of US and across 50 countries. So a lot of our trainings and content that Richardson Sales has got is on deep expertise that they've carried for the last 40 years. And a lot of these trainings and content is proven in terms of some of the clients that trainings have been done for. So without further ado, I'll pass on to Tim, and I'm sure this short session will be quite exciting, and hoping that your feedback on part of this session and furthermore conversations would be a huge value add to you and your firm. Thank you so much. Tim, all out to you.
Great, thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to be here with you today, and also be joined by my colleague, Sandeep Mitra, who's also going to be co-presenting with me. A quick introduction of myself, and Sandeep, you can introduce yourself as soon as I'm done here. I have been looking at sales organizations for more than 30 years, and in fact, working with Richardson Sales Performance now. We are very pleased to be working with a wide variety of different kinds of customers throughout the world today, as you just saw Suresh just shared with you. And today we're going to be talking about solution selling, and solution selling is an idea of how sales professionals can align effectively with potential buyers and do so in a way where they can be much more successful. And solution selling has been around for a long time. It's actually had its origins about 40 years ago in working in high tech and manufacturing industries. But since then, solution selling and the idea of aligning with buyers has been adapted to a wide variety of industries and current buyer behaviors. So it has evolved considerably since its origins. And what we'll be sharing with you today is an abbreviated masterclass of the core principles of solution selling. And it's my hope that you will take away at least a few ideas that you can begin to apply to your situations today. Sandeep, if you can give a short introduction and tell people here about yourself as well.
Thanks, team. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and assalamu alaikum. This is Sandeep Mitra. I've got about more than 3 decades of experience working with middle and senior management roles across a wide spectrum of organizations in manufacturing, consumer durables, paints, publishing, media, education, and consulting, mostly in the sales and business development roles. For the last 15 years, I've devoted myself to pursuing my passion in learning and development, and the area that fascinates me most is obviously selling. I look forward to an engaging and interactive session with this esteemed audience on solution selling. May I now request Tim to start the session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sandeep. And let me go ahead and share my screen. What I would like to ask of everyone in the audience, normally when we are conducting a solution selling training session, we have exercises that have been set up. It's very interactive, and we are asking people to apply to their situation. Well, we don't have that much time today. So today we're going to be focusing on presenting the key principles of solution selling, and also provide you with examples of various tools and ways that you can apply these principles. But we do want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions as we go forward, go ahead and type them in the chat or the Q&A area. And Sandeep, if you could monitor that, feel free to interrupt me, and we'll take questions as we go along, and then we'll switch back and forth as we proceed through the materials today. So feel free to just type your questions into the Q&A or chat area, and we will be happy to answer them as we progress. All right. Before I begin, let me share with you, why is this important? Why are we here today? And I think the best way to illustrate that is with an example of a customer that has used solution selling recently. We worked with a software organization started about a year and a half ago, and they were having some significant problems with the number of opportunities that were not going to a final decision, where customers were evaluating their solutions and then just deciding to do nothing. In fact, more than 25% of their opportunities were not closing at all, which is a tremendous waste of time. Not only that, but their transaction size was relatively small. They weren't selling their entire portfolio, and the competition was increasing, and it was making it more difficult for them to attain their sales goals. In fact, they were considerably short of their target revenues that they had hoped to achieve. So they implemented a solution selling approach, which is an approach that focuses the seller's behavior on aligning with buyers and making it easier for them to progress through an evaluation and make a decision to buy. And their results were dramatic. Within less than a year, they had cut that no decision rate from more than 25% to less than 15%. So they cut it almost in half, which meant they were getting more wins, a higher win rate. But more importantly, they increased the average size of their opportunities by almost 20%. So they were able to sell more of their portfolio. And as a result of that, they actually, within a year, exceeded their revenue targets. In fact, they became so profitable that another organization was very attracted to them, and they ultimately acquired the firm, which made the owners very happy. So that's the reason why solution selling is important. It produces some real results in a very short period of time, and enables organizations to be more consistent in how they can achieve their targets and goals. So let me go ahead and go right into the material here, and we will give you some ideas of what the content contains here. Oh, here's my case study right here. So yeah, the number of no decisions was 28%. And after a year, they were able to reduce that to less than 15. And the size of opportunities increased by almost 20%. And as a result, they were much more strong in the industry. I should have showed that to you. All right, let me go ahead and start with the main content. So what are the key concepts of solution selling? Well, solution selling is, first of all, based on the idea of aligning effectively with buyers. That is, to meet buyers where they are and to guide them to a purchase decision. It also is about stimulating interest and curiosity. How do we get customers to potentially be interested in what we have to offer, and how do we begin a new opportunity? We're going to show you some techniques for that as well. It's also about having effective consultative sales conversations, ones that provide value not only to the seller, but also to the customer as well. And we'll show you a model for how to do that consistently and effectively and provide real insight and extra value in your sales conversations to customers. It's a great way to differentiate yourself. The biggest problem that we hear from salespeople today is getting access to people with influence and authority. That is, those that are going to be making the real decisions about what it is that you have to offer. And we're going to talk briefly about some ways that you can overcome that challenge today. Also, buyers today are expecting salespeople to collaborate with them, to work with them, to develop solutions together where they can combine ideas and create an optimized solution that will address their problems or help them to capitalize on new opportunities. So we're going to talk about how to collaborate effectively and help the customer to achieve consensus in their own organization, so that makes it easier for them to buy your solution. And then finally, every salesperson has to do the negotiation and closing to actually convince customers to make a purchase decision. And we'll show you a model for how to prepare for that and how to do it well, so that you can negotiate and close with a high profitability, where you're not just discounting on price, but finding other ways to negotiate with customers that are going to be acceptable to them and help make it easier for them to make that final purchase decision. And then we'll also end with a very useful technique that you can apply to your own opportunities, which is a schema, if you will, or a structure for how you can look at opportunities and determine the quality of those opportunities. And that will tell you two things. Number one, it will tell you what you need to do to progress or move that opportunity closer to a close. But the other thing that we'll do as well is it will give you some objective criteria for deciding when should you walk away? When should you qualify out and free up your most precious resource, which is your time? So we'll end the day with a review on opportunity qualification, which you can then apply to your own sales situations. So let's start first with the key principle of solution selling, which is buying process and aligning with it. How do we understand the buyer journey as they're making their decision? And how can we as sales professionals align with that behavior so that it feels natural to the customer, so that it feels like you're in the position to help them and be of assistance or of value to them, to be of service to them, and create a really useful experience, therefore making it easier for them to buy from you. This is the core principle upon which solution selling is based. The idea of aligning with buyers by first understanding where they are and how we can then assist them given where they are in their buyer journey. Today, buyers want to guide themselves through their own buying process. When I first started in sales more than 45 years ago, which tells you how old I am, but when I started in sales, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have access to information that we have today. And so if the customer wanted to know about the kinds of capabilities that I had to offer, they had to speak to me. I had to guide them through a buying process. Today, customers have ready access to all sorts of information. They can find out about your company. They can talk to other customers. It's relatively easy for them. In fact, there's almost too much information. And so as a result, they like to form their own opinions and guide themselves through their own buying process. Also, buyers today are very comfortable using technology. We all know how to go online and do searches and find information. There was a recent study that was conducted by Demand Gen magazine that looked at executives, people with C-level titles, chief executive officer, chief operating officer, chief financial officer, and they found that almost 90% of C-level executives today are very comfortable doing their own searches and finding information. So even at the highest levels of buying organizations, they're using electronic media and access to information to find out more about you before they ever engage with you. They want to lead their buying process, as I mentioned before. They want to be working with you to get the information from you and go through the steps of the buying process at a pace that they want to dictate. However, they also tend to be very impatient and risk averse. And what that means is when they do engage with salespeople, they expect you to add value immediately. They want you to be able to provide insight or different ways of looking at things, to provide expertise immediately so that they can move forward with their buying journey. They're also risk averse. They tend to want to have perfect information about their situation before they make a buying decision. In fact, the #1 competitor for salespeople today are not other alternative vendors of the kinds of solutions you offer, but making no decision at all. That is, if the customer decides to stay with the status quo or not to do things in a different way, that increasingly is the largest competitor. In fact, in the case study that I cited earlier, that by far was the largest group of kinds of competitive situations. They were losing basically to no decision. And so if we can provide customers or buyers with things that will help to mitigate that risk or lower that perception of risk, it'll make it easier for them to make a purchase decision. And as I mentioned, they also expect sellers to provide value and engage. When they reach out to a vendor, they've usually formulated an idea in their mind, and they want that vendor to then either validate that idea or help improve upon it. So how do modern buyers buy today? Let's look at a behavioral model. And this is a model that was developed almost 40 years ago. It's been enhanced and improved as we've continuously observed buyer behavior, but it hasn't changed very much. The fundamental psychology of buyers remains the same. And whenever we go through a buying process, even if it's something very trivial or something that's much more strategic and important, we always go through these steps of a buying process, and that you can go through them very, very quickly, or it can take an extended period of time. All buyers start in a latent state, or one where they might be planning what they're going to do next, looking at what kind of outside forces are acting on them, and then they develop strategies or priorities or kick off projects. In fact, usually as they're going through that evaluation process, or they become aware that they have a critical business issue or a potential missed opportunity they want to capitalize, we call that a pain, or an admitted pain for short. Right? Once they recognize that there's some reason for them to do something different, then they enter into the next stage, which is a focus on determining their needs. Well, if we have this situation, what do we need to be able to accommodate or deal with that situation? How do we overcome that challenge? And so that can take some time for them to evaluate what are all the different kinds of capabilities that we might want to bring into our organization, or for me personally, to be able to address the situation that I'm in today. Once they have a pretty good idea of what their needs are, the next phase of evaluation or a buyer journey is to evaluate different alternatives. Once I have an understanding of what I'm looking for, what's available to me, either from outside vendors or things that I can do myself to help address that issue. So the focus here is on what's some potential solutions and how do they rank relative to each other. One thing that we have observed, and this remains very consistent today, is that the concept of price is important at the beginning of the process. We don't want to overinvest in a solution that is too expensive for us to see any value from it. So I might have a range in mind when I'm looking at different, I'm trying to evaluate my needs. For example, if I'm going to buy a new house because my family is getting larger and I need to take care of my children, and my wife and I, we don't have enough space in our apartment, so we want to buy a house, I can calculate a whole variety of different needs, but I also have a price range in mind. Right? We have different levels of how much we want to spend on that house. But then when we're looking at different houses, I might look at houses that are a little more expensive, right? To get some ideas and validate my needs. And also other customers, as they're looking at different solutions, they might do the same thing. They might look at different solutions that are outside of their price range to validate their list of needs, or to maybe get some ideas that they could use to enhance their list of requirements. It does become more important again. Price becomes a critical factor in evaluating risk. We never want to spend more than we have to. So it does reemerge in the final phase, which is evaluating risk. But this phase is not just about price. It's also about evaluating other forms of risk. For example, transitional risk. How do I get from where I am today to what this new solution will be like? In other words, do I have to train people or bring new people on board? What do I do with the old ways that I have done things? How do I make that transition to the new ways? And am I able to make those changes, right? I also want to know, is there enough value there for me to take action? Is the expense that I'm going to incur less than the value that I will get over time? And then finally, do we know that this solution will work exactly as we believe that it will? Will there be anything that will prevent it from reaching its full potential? So evaluating those kinds of risks as well as price is what we see in that final phase when our customers are evaluating risk. And here's where we find customers can get frozen. That is, they can decide not to make a decision. They may understand that they have needs. They may find a perfect solution, but they still may not choose not to buy or to do anything new or different if they can't overcome those perceptions of risk. Now, that's the psychological model of how buyers buy today. And we find this to be true in just about every industry and every purchase situation. What's interesting about this is that salespeople can use this as a model for determining where the buyer is in their journey when they first encounter them. Salespeople or sales professionals can be invited to participate by the buyer in any of these phases. They may engage with salespeople or vendors very early when they're in the planning stage, just to get some ideas of what they might do differently in the future. Or they may engage with a seller to help them to create the list of requirements or determine their needs if they perceive that they have some expertise that may be helpful. Most buyers today engage with vendors and bring in sellers in the phase where they're evaluating alternatives. Once they have an idea of what it is that they might want to buy, a vision of what their potential needs or requirements are, they will then evaluate. In fact, more than half of all customers today tend to bring salespeople in this second phase where they're evaluating alternatives. And then the final phase where they're evaluating price and looking at the various risks in making that decision and moving forward with the solution, we can be invited to participate there as well. How many of you have had a call from a potential customer who has said, I only need a price quotation. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. You don't need to send me any information. Just tell me how much it costs. Right? Well, if you get those calls, the chances are very high that they're probably in the third phase. They've made a decision to buy a different solution, and they're just using you to evaluate your cost relative to the price that they've been quoted. And frankly, your chances of winning that business are not very high unless you can get them to expand their vision of what a potential solution might be. And we'll show you some methods for doing that today. So the first challenge for any salesperson is when they first encounter a potential buyer, is to ask themselves, where is this buyer in this journey? Are they at the first and latent state phase? Are they determining their needs? Are they evaluating alternatives? Or are they evaluating risk? And that will tell us what we as salespeople need to do in order to align with that buyer and guide them to an optimal solution. Okay. Sandeep, if there are any questions here, be sure to let me know and I can answer them as well.
Sure. Yeah, so
all right. Hello. It appears that I was kicked off. Hello, Sandeep. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, sorry, I lost contact.
Did we all get kicked off, or was it just me?
Hello.
Hello, Sawan.
Hi. I think we had some technical issue. We can continue.
Yeah.
If 18 attendees with us.
Okay. I can. Uh-oh. I'm ready to restart whenever we get everyone back online. It looks like everybody lost the connection.
Apologies for the disconnection, everyone. We just had a technical issue, but we are back. I think, Mr. Tim, you're the host again. You can share your slide.
Great. We'll go ahead and restart. Bear with me here. Whoa, hold on. Okay. Well, I will go ahead and restart. Someone, if you want to restart the recording, we can go ahead and do that. Okay. And excellent. Well, I'm sorry about the technical glitch, everybody. I hope everyone is able to rejoin here, and I'm sorry for the trouble. But let's go ahead and dive back into our material. So we talked about the psychological model, that is the stages of behavior that buyers go through as they're evaluating their solutions. What I'd also like to share with you is the process that buyers go through when they're making a purchase decision as well. And this aligns with the 4 phases that we discussed earlier. Customers start in a state where they're not currently looking because they either don't know that there's other ways or better ways of doing things than what they're doing today, or they're aware and they're just not, they don't see that it's motivating enough for them to take action yet. But at some point, they move from that latent state to one where they're evaluating needs, and they actually begin to actively look for different kinds of solutions, moving from that latent state to an active looking state. And usually it's when they recognize that they have a critical business issue or a potential missed opportunity that they need to take action on. Once they start looking, they are evaluating their needs and they build a list of requirements, so customer requirements. And that can be influenced by a variety of different sources. They can do their own research, of course, and gather information. And most buyers or customers are very easy for them to do this today. And so that's how they tend to do that. But it could also be influenced by outside consultants or advisors, or by other vendors if they're invited to participate in the purchase process early. Once they have those requirements, they evaluate various solutions and they look at different vendors or alternatives for their solution and then compare them to their initial list of requirements. Right? So understanding where we are in the buyer's journey tells us more or less where we are in how they're buying today. If they already have a list of firm customer requirements, then I'm probably entering in that middle phase where they're evaluating different alternatives. And now I've got to find a way to see how we can either match up with those requirements, or if we can help the customer to see that we can do things in different ways or better ways, if we can change those requirements to those that favor us. In fact, what we tend to find is that other vendors that don't quite match the requirements, we call them column fodder. They're usually brought in by customers to lower their risk in their evaluation of a solution. And the chances of them winning the business, of course, are lower unless they can change those requirements to those that favor them. So if we understand how buyers prefer to buy, and if we understand that we as sellers need to align with buyers when we first engage with them, understand where they are in their process and align ourselves with where they are in that process. If we understand how buyers procedurally and behaviorally go through a purchase process, it becomes much easier for us to figure out how to work with different potential buyers and help build a case for evaluating our solution. But it all starts first with stimulating that buyer's interest and curiosity. If I'm going to engage with a customer in that initial latent state, how do I get them to move from a latent state to one where they're evaluating solutions? In fact, our research shows that if you're able to do that, if you're able to take a customer from a latent state to one where they admit that they have a pain and are moving forward with a new project or opportunity, that your chances of winning that business exceed 85%. So engaging early with customers, stimulating their interest and curiosity, and getting them to move from a latent state to one where they start to think about the various needs that they may have to evaluate a new solution is a very powerful position.
Can I speak to can I speak to Hajar or Saeed?
I'm afraid you're on mute. Yeah, you need to go on mute. Thank you very much. So we talked earlier about the concept of pain, and let me spend a little bit of time on this because I think it's important for us to understand that customers are not motivated to take action or to move forward with a buying decision unless they recognize that they have a critical business issue or a potential missed opportunity, some kind of problem that they want to solve, a goal that they want to attain. They don't quite know how to do that or the best way to do it, or they have some kind of process or thing that they're doing right today that it really isn't meeting their needs or is proving to be a challenge to that organization. Pains are always there's something that's negative. A bad thing is happening as a result of their current situation. And they're also job specific. They're specific to a particular individual. They have to do with how that person is measured, motivated, and recognized by their peers. Pain is not generic. An organization doesn't have pain. Individuals in that organization have a variety of different kinds of pain, and they interact with each other or affect each other in a variety of ways. So when we're selling to a buyer, it's important for us to understand what the role of that particular person is in that buying organization and what their specific pains are that are affecting them. And those are those things that they are personally measured, motivated, and recognized by. There's always different categories of pain as well. They can be an increasing bad thing, like increasing operating costs, a decreasing good thing, like we're losing market share. It could be a compliance issue, that is some kind of a government regulation that requires them to take action, or else there'll be bad things that happen, like a fine or some kind of cost to their particular business. Or then finally, a missed opportunity, something that they see that they can capitalize on, but they don't have the resources in place or the capability to reach that particular goal, like identified new growth markets and they want to get into it quickly. Can your capability help them to do that? So As you're looking at buyers, the important thing to start with is what's motivating them to take action. That is, what is the underlying pain, the problem, critical business, or missed opportunity to that individual, and how can you show that your capabilities can help them to overcome that particular issue. One of the great tools that we would recommend to you is something we call a pain chain, or a key player list. We'll talk about pain chains in a minute. A key player list is a list of potential critical business issues or potential missed opportunities for different roles that you normally sell to. And if you don't have one of these today, as a sales professional, I would urge you to think about the kinds of customers that you sell to today and the kinds of roles or titles or people that ideally you would like to connect with. And then think about what are some of the critical business issues or potential missed opportunities? What are some of the pains that each of those roles have when they're evaluating your solutions? We want those pains to be things, obviously, that whatever it is that we're selling can affect in a positive way, that can help to overcome that issue. And then if I have a list of what those potential pains are, and I understand how my capabilities can match or address each of those, then when I'm talking to different roles in the organization, then I can tune my questions or my conversations relative to the pains that are most important for them. So rather than talk about our capabilities in a general way, or talk about our companies in a general way, that's not terribly helpful to most buyers as they're evaluating your solutions, especially very early in their buyer journey. We want to instead focus on specific pains that are going to be of most interest to them personally. And if we can create messages that directly tie to those pains, then they're going to be much more likely to be interested or generate some curiosity. A general kind of thing like, well, we help organizations increase their revenue. Well, that sounds very nice, but unless that's something that I'm directly measured on, say, for example, a VP of sales or even a president or CEO or a CFO, if I'm not one of those titles, then I may not care that much about that. So it's a good thing, and I think that's wonderful, but it's not going to motivate me to want to know more, be interested in trying to learn more about my solutions. So we would urge you to build a key player list of the typical roles that you sell to and list the most important pains that you address with your kinds of capabilities, and what does that look like for them. Now, you notice that all of these are things that follow the format we talked about earlier. They're either increasing bad things, decreasing good things, some kind of compliance issue, or addressing a potential missed opportunity.
Tim, there is a question from Mr. Hussain. The question is, how do we initiate curiosity? So if you can just answer that briefly.
That's a great question. In fact, I'm about to address that in the very next slide. So let me go ahead and share that with you. You're a perfect setup for what I want to talk about next. We find that the most powerful way to stimulate interest and curiosity is to use a story that describes the results of another client or another customer, something that that particular person can relate to. So if I'm talking to a VP of sales, in this case in the manufacturing industry, that if I can have a results story that describes a critical business issue, that is the same issue that the person that I'm talking to is measured, rewarded, or evaluated by. Now I have a story of someone that's a peer to them or someone that is very similar to their situation. I'm immediately hooked. Let me tell you about a story about another VP of sales that we worked with. They were talking with you or doing some research on you, reminded me of this situation. They were missing revenue targets. And in fact, here's some reasons why they were having that particular issue. And of course, our customer or potential customer will be hearing this and thinking, do I have the same issue? Or is this describing a similar situation to what I'm having to deal with? And then if we can describe the capability that we provide. Now, notice we're not listing a product here. You know, they used our product X is not a good description of the capability. That is, if we can describe how they did something different or better or new that addressed their critical business issue or potential opportunity to address their pain. So in this example, we had a VP of sales who were missing revenue targets. They had inaccurate sales data, so they really didn't know where to coach or even what opportunities to focus on. He said that each morning he wanted to see a single dashboard of the entire pipeline from his mobile device with the option to click through in increasing levels of detail, so he could have instant access to all of that data and quickly provide appropriate feedback and direction to his sellers so he could manage the business more effectively. Now, notice what we're doing. We're creating a word picture. We're helping the customer to visualize how they might do something different in a way that's going to address their particular pain. Then we provided this capability, and here is probably the only place if you want to list a particular product, you can say it here, but I'm not describing the product in detail, but we're providing that capability. And here's the most important line in the entire reference story. That is, what were the results? In the example here, it says, within the first year, he was able to improve win rates on key opportunities, leading to a 5% increase in revenue and allowing him to achieve his overall revenue targets. The most important thing in that result line is some kind of real quantitative result. You'll notice at the beginning of the session today, I started with a results or a success story. I talked about a customer that was not able to bring opportunities to a close, or they weren't selling their whole portfolio. And so the size of opportunities, they weren't meeting their revenue targets, and then described the capability that we provide and the results that they achieved. And I am sure that many of you, when they were listening to that results story, were thinking, I wonder what it would be like for us if we were able to reduce the number of opportunities, that weren't making a decision, or if we could increase the size of opportunities by almost 20%. What would that mean to me, right? How would that help affect my business? So Sandeep.
Yeah, there's one question here. How we can create curiosity when organization is a startup where there is no past result or critical business issue to describe?
That's right. That's a very good question. So there's a number of ways that we can do that. If we don't have result stories that we can share, then we can use other kinds of forms of information that will help to stimulate their interest. For example, if you've done some thought leadership, you've written white papers, or if you've done clinical studies, or if you have done industry research and published your point of view about a particular issue or a pain that someone is trying to address or solve, then that at least shows that you have done some thinking and have demonstrated some expertise, and that will stimulate some interest and curiosity. It's not as powerful as a result story because everybody loves good stories and are able to immediately apply. But if you can use that thought leadership to help stimulate their interest, and then from there say, basically what we've done here based on our research, I think that I can estimate that you might get this much improvement as a result of using a capability. And that's based on the following assumptions. And if you can then cite some examples from the research that you've done before stimulating, having that meeting with the customer, then they can react to that. They can say, oh, I think that's too much, or it's not enough, or where did you get those numbers? But now you're talking about something that has to do with the value of your potential solution and not talking about the features and functions, which is useful, but doesn't really help to get them to visualize, to be motivated to take action. So using thought leadership, using other kinds of industry research, if you can do, publish some thought leadership and then provide that as a demonstration of your expertise, can also stimulate buyer interest and curiosity, even for new products. Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
That's good.
Thanks for the reply. May I take on the baton? I think the next session, if you can share the slide on consultative sales conversations.
Sure thing.
Right. So in the last session, we saw how to stimulate buyer interest and make your prospective client interested enough to start engaging with you. And now let's say you have landed your first meeting or that first call with the prospect, right? So once you have, one of the rules, we can go to the next slide. In Stephen Covey's famous book on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is start with the end in mind. And this is so important, especially for all those salespeople who hang up after the first call or meeting saying that, we could have done better. So here's a checklist of what you should achieve at the end of the call. Although it's a numbered and sequential list, there is no reason to believe that the prospect will follow this. We should be smart enough to listen carefully and gather the information as the conversation is flowing. However, like a pearl diver, you should focus, your focus should be to identify as many of these as you can during the course of the sales conversation. So let's look very quickly at these points. The first one is obviously the client is admitting and articulating the pain. And is it business critical? It's very important that it is. And also remember that pain is unique to each key player and different from those of the others. So we will cover how the pain of each key player in an organization is interrelated later during this session. The second point is about, are we able to establish the reasons for the pain? And are we able to quantify the impact of the pain? The third point is about what all capabilities are needed to address the reason to act. The fourth point is around the value that we bring to the table and the compelling reason to act. The fifth is whether the client is agreeing to explore and collaborate with us. The sixth is giving access to the decision maker, because most of the cases you may not be meeting the decision maker in the first go. So that becomes one of the objectives if you're able to establish value and capabilities to address the pain. Yes. And the last one obviously would be what are the next steps to move the opportunity forward. So if these are our goals, it is obvious that we should do some kind of proper, like pre-call planning to decide where the customer is in the buying cycle. Hence, what will he be expecting from us? How do we proceed with the call? What the objective should be, and how we want to move, how we want to achieve those objectives. Next slide, please. Right. So to prepare for the sales conversation, we need to develop what we call is situational fluency. Now, what is situational fluency? It's the application of relevant skills, knowledge, and attitude to have a powerful buyer-aligned sales conversation. Okay. So you start by researching the company, then the individuals. Maybe we can do the animations, all of them. Yeah. We start by researching the company, the individuals, and also identifying the capabilities which are aligned to the potential business issues of the company and the individual roles these people with whom you're interacting may have. Based on the understanding of these three elements, you prepare customized messages and diagnostic questions to appeal to the specific individuals and the context of the organization. We will cover the diagnostic questions in greater detail in the next section. Now, in order to demonstrate situational fluency, we need to identify the business issues that need to be addressed and the contributing reasons for those issues. We can do this through the research of the company, its competitors, similar issues which are faced by the industry. For example, you may have worked with another company in the same industry, and hence you have some insights which you can then share in this situation. Developing the questions, of course, we have covered. The formulate what capabilities may be necessary to help the buyer, and how to establish, and position our capabilities to provide value to the buyer while differentiating our solution from that of the competitors, right? The next would be decide on the type of proof needed to build buyer trust and enthusiasm to proceed further. Develop some visuals or examples, presentations to communicate and collaborate with the client participants. Okay, so this is all about the preparation. Once you have done this, we are ready to have the buyer-aligned sales conversation. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. So if you look at now this is very critical. This is where the action, really the engagement with the client and the conversation takes place. So there are three parts to it. The first part is the opening. And as you see, it's a very structured framework that Richardson propounds. And we start with sharing the meeting objectives, and then introducing the participants, and finally move to discussing the business issue and current vision in case that has been shared by the buyer. We'll look at all the three possibilities. What if the buyer does not share a business issue? That also will cover. In the second part, we are looking at discussing and agreeing on the buying vision through a diagnostic conversation to explore the pain, the reasons for the pain, and the capabilities required for the buying vision. Okay, so that we cover in the second part. And finally, we identify the decision-making process and draw up a collaboration plan on the next steps. Now, the second and third steps we will cover in more detail in the subsequent sessions. So let us spend a minute or two on the first step of how to open the sales conversation. Now, some of the common meeting objectives include proving sellers' credibility, or meeting or gaining access to key buyer influencers or decision makers, exploring buyers' business issues and potential solution vision, positioning the seller's differentiated capabilities and value, and gaining agreement on next steps to move the opportunity forward. So these being the objectives, you initiate the discussion on the business issue after you lay down the objectives and you get agreement with the client on the objectives to be covered in that particular meeting. All the objectives may not be possible to cover all the objectives in one meeting. However, once you lay down the ground rules of that particular meeting, you're ready to move ahead. So like Tim said, we can start with sharing a client's results story, which establishes our credibility aligned to a potential pain. Remember, we have already prepared and identified some potential pain areas and possible reasons around that. So what this does is that while the client may not agree to the pain, what we are putting forward in the client's result story, but what it does is it opens him up to sharing his pain and admitting a critical business issue and maybe the current vision. In case the client does not admit a pain, there are questions that can be asked to guide the conversation towards an admission of pain. We will cover this in greater detail in the subsequent section. Okay, next, the next slide, please. Yeah. So before we get into understanding the sales conversation model, let us focus our attention on a very important tool which is needed to create differentiation by making the seller's solution stand out against the competition through the uniqueness of the capabilities and the added business value those capabilities provide the buyer organization. Now, on the left-hand side, you see that we have listed the solution components. From this example, if you can run through the animation. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, it's a software automation, sales automation software tool. Now, if you look at all these elements, now let's pick up one or two and discuss that. Now, let's look at E, for example. Now, E is data migration and, sorry, Tim, I think we moved ahead. Can we go back? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I was referring to E, and I think E was around data migration and cleansing services. Now, it's a clear differentiator. Why and how we are doing this great? We are looking at the value to the customer and also the uniqueness of that particular component. Now, if it is scoring high on both these parameters, then it is a differentiator, right? However, let's pick up another one. Let's take G, for example. Now, G is the tailoring and branding, and that is not a true differentiator. Why? Because it's more like a commodity and what the competitor is also offering. Now, the beauty of this tool is that you can focus on the real differentiators, which are on the top right quadrant, and prepare questions which will lead the sales conversation to address the pain areas and the reasons which can be addressed by these specific capabilities. Okay. Now, it's important to remember that in today's environment, differentiators quickly move from something unique to something which all competitors offer. And so there is a need to think beyond the traditional differentiators that we usually talk about in terms of functions and features. So it could be around organization, expertise, products, services, support, people, partners, and even how you sell. Okay, so there's a need to look at differentiators beyond the product features. That's in essence what we are trying to say here. We can go to the next slide, please. Now we have come to the sales conversation. Now this is a very structured process of solution selling, how to have this sales conversation. And so this, if you remember, it's the second part of the buyer-aligned conversation we covered earlier. So this is a framework which is intended to help foster a collaborative sales conversation between a buyer and a seller. We start from the left red box on the top, on the left corner, where it's written pain. The premise here is that the buyer has shared a high priority business issue. So we should apply the principle, diagnose before you prescribe, and avoid, once the client has already shared the pain, the tendency is to jump straight into and suggest an idea or a vision or a solution. So first we should ask the buyer to identify the reason for the pain, which is marked in box 1, right? Before we offer our perspective. So the sequence is, first we understand the perspective of the client, what is causing him the pain, and then if he's able to articulate well and good, we can also add our own perspective by exploring some more reasons that we would have thought about. That's how we add value. And if the buyer agrees to that, again, do not jump to suggesting an idea or a vision. There is a little bit more work to be done. For every reason of pain, we should ask some drill down questions, like how often do you receive, we are talking about the sales automation software here. So how often do you receive the data? Or how many people are involved in the process of data collection? Or how much business revenue are you losing for not getting the right kind of data? So these questions are very important. Now, if you notice, these questions are all pointing towards the quantification. Okay, so they're important as they help us to quantify the impact of the reason for the pain. We will use this later to showcase the value of the solution in monetary terms. So this is a very important step. Once we have done that, we have thoroughly diagnosed the potential reason for the pain, we move to box 3 and summarize and confirm a joint perspective. So we took the client's perspective, we added our own perspective, we did the diagnosis, and now we are ready to summarize it and do a final checking by asking something like, is that correct? Are we aligned on that? If we are, then we are ready to move to the 4th box, which is around exploring and positioning our capabilities. So we ask a question like, what are your thoughts or ideas on how to address this situation to get revenues back on track, right? And please notice that these are open questions, which make the customer also think and share his desired buying vision or the required capabilities. And once again, following the same pattern that we did on the left-hand side while diagnosing, the right-hand side also, we first get the customer's perspective in terms of the vision, and then we add our own capabilities. Now we have prepared, if you remember, the differentiators. Now this is the place where we use the differentiators. However, we don't state statements, we ask questions. Now let's say, for example, I have this noted out here that let's say we are working on an opportunity. A salesperson could access a secure social networking site for highly rated content like ideas or sales aids or best practices and experiences in the form of text, audio, or video. So which is peer reviewed, let's say, and hence gives the best kind of opportunities to share with the clients. So would that be useful to you? Now, I'm couching the differentiator or my capability in the form of a question and adding it to the perspective of the customer. This will give us the scope. Now, if the customer agrees to that, it means that we have differentiated ourselves from the competitor. Okay, so this is how we do it. And if you notice the dollar sign, this indicates that if you have done your maths when diagnosing the reasons, you can weave the figures back here to support the capability. Like, for example, if you're able to improve the conversion rate, we were talking about conversion rate earlier. Tim was mentioning about that 18% moving up and all. So let's say even if we convert one deal per salesperson in a month, okay, with an average ticket size of, let's say, $50,000 and a team size of 8 salespeople, we can generate additional revenue of, let's say, $4 million annually. What would that mean in terms of your ability to achieve your quota in the coming year, right? So from the pain, we are smoothly transitioning to the capability, and we are articulating that in quantifiable terms. So that's the strength of this model on sales conversion. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Now, this is a tool. This is a prompter. It's called the Sales Conversation Prompter. It's a tool to help the salespeople prepare the situational questions and the responses based on their specific capabilities. Okay, so the capability questions are structured. If you look at the, I'm not going into the reasons in the interest of time, but if you look at the capability statements, they are structured in the when, who, what sequence. So, if you read any one of those three, when executing an email campaign, blah, 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 it goes, and then who is it for? So it is for the sales team, and provide the sales team with what? With an automated, prioritized list of potential prospects. So this is a very structured way of putting across the capability vision, which the client can visualize and also agree in case he sees value in it, how it is solving my pain. Okay. While you may have, we can move to the next slide, Tim. While you may have had a successful sales conversation with the key player, in a typical B2B sales scenario, there would be multiple stakeholders. And it is important to determine the ability of the person you have met to buy and or influence the others. Now, the way to do that is to ask questions about impact of others. Remember in the sales conversation, we already spoke about, the impact, and here you follow it up by asking, how would it impact the others, and do we need sponsorship of other people in this process? So if you're talking to the power himself, now let me clarify before I get into this concept of what is a power. So a sponsor is somebody who's supporting you in the sales cycle, and he will ultimately provide you access to the power sponsor. Whereas a power sponsor is someone with the influence and or authority to take a decision, a purchase decision, or negotiate the steps leading to a purchase decision. Okay, so it depends on who you're speaking to. In case you are speaking to a sponsor, then we should seek permission, to connect to the power sponsor. And if you have the support, it's good. If it is denied, then you suggest a fair example. A fair exchange. For example, what if we do a proof of concept, or if we do a successful demo? Would you then introduce me to the decision maker? So you get into a discussion around that and get an agreement with the sponsor on that. Okay. Now, yes. So as we stated before, the pains of different key players are interrelated. And so we say that pain flows through an organization. Let's go to the pain chain. Yes. So a pain chain, again, a very critical tool of solution selling. It illustrates the relationship between the pains and the contributing reasons for those pains across the buyer organization. Let's look at the example at the top. So here the president has a pain of declining margins. Now, there are two reasons which are stated, and one is missing revenue targets. Let's take that one. Now, if you take missing revenue targets, that's a pain for a VP sales, because obviously as the head of sales, that is his prime target. You know, he has to achieve the revenue targets. And if he's missing that, that is a pain. Now, what could be the reason for that? One of the reasons could be that we are looking at inaccurate critical sales data. Okay, he's not getting the right kind of sales data to take the decisions. Okay, and that can be, so that is a reason. So the pain of one person is the reason for the pain of another person. That's how it is called a pain chain. And it links up vertically through an organization. It is, as salespeople, if we are able to find those reasons, and we are able to understand how the pain interlinks between the different key players. When we are having a conversation with the president, then we discuss his pain and his reasons. When we are having the discussion with VP sales, then we are going to address his particular pain and his reasons. So that's how this is so powerful. And it helps us understand, you know, what are, we also differentiate ourselves from the competitors by demonstrating an understanding of the buyer's business. So in effect, it means that if the pain of one person is resolved, then the others also benefit, and the ripple effect continues across the organization. Now, after you have had a sales conversation, the meeting, you should follow it with a sponsor email. Now, there are two examples. This one is just an example of a sponsor email. Now, if you notice very carefully, it is in fine print. There are 7 bullet points. One, you recall the pain. Number 2 is the reason for the pain. Number 3 is the capabilities that are needed, right? You list that out. And this is all based on the discussion, the conversation that you had had. The 4th is the potential value, and you're actually calling it out by saying that, yes, you know, if I read this out, the lost revenue approximately 14%. Now that's the potential, that's the value, and the compelling reason to act. And then move to 5. 5 is the organizational impact, and 6 is agreement to move forward and explore further. And 7, you support this email with a draft collaboration plan. Now, Tim will be sharing with you and talking more about the collaboration plan. I think over to you, Tim, to carry it on from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep. We do have a few questions, and we'll cover those here at the end. We're running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to accelerate here to make sure we cover all the core concepts we want to provide to you today. Sandeep mentioned collaborating to win, and we talked earlier about situational fluency and how customers want us to collaborate with them because they have ideas, they've done research, and then they want, when they engage with sellers, they want those sellers to provide new insights and new points of view and guide them to a decision. Also recall from the psychology of the buyer, that final phase of their evaluation or the buyer journey is one where they're evaluating risk. And if we can provide a way for them to overcome those perceptions of risk, it will make it much easier for them to make a purchase decision. They won't get frozen in deciding to not do anything. The tool that we recommend that sellers use is something we call a collaboration plan. And here's an example of a collaboration plan for a relatively complex solution. It's a list of activities that a buyer can go through to evaluate the kinds of solutions that you provide. And of course, this is tailored for each customer depending on how they want to evaluate you. It includes a list of activities, people that we can talk to, things that they can do to help overcome 3 forms of risk. And if you can provide this to a potential buyer and ask them for their feedback, notice it says draft on here because we want to provide this to a buyer as a draft that they can change. And if they then change it or say, hey, you've forgotten some steps, or there's some different people here, or we can't make this date, and they adjust it, that's a very good thing, because then that tells us we're in alignment with that buyer at that step, and we can help to work with them and collaborate to help build consensus in that organization. This is a very powerful tool. Candidly, if there's any one thing you take away from this masterclass on solution selling that you can begin to use to make your sales efforts more effective, I would say it's the collaboration plan. You know, helping to help guide customers to a purchase decision that overcomes their perception of risk is extremely powerful. So what do we put in a collaboration plan? Well, that's dictated by the 3 sales within a sale. In every sale or every purchase decision, customers are evaluating 3 forms of risk. The first is operational risk. That is, conceptually, does the solution that you are suggesting actually work the way that you describe, right? And so some things that we can suggest in a collaboration plan might be reference stories, or a demonstration, or a site visit, or talking to other customers, or talking to our industry experts, any number of things that will help them to understand how your solution works operationally and how it will fit their situation. The next form of risk is the financial risk. In fact, we had a question a little bit earlier about this, and I think that gets at the issue. If we've done a good job in our consultative sales conversation and quantified the various reasons why people are having a pain, then we can then determine what the potential impact might be, as Sandeep talked about, and then provide a case for financial value that will be larger than the cost, or the larger than the investment that they need to make in the organization. So if we've done a good job in our diagnostic questions and our consultative conversations, we'll have enough information for us to be able to create a business case and create a vision in the mind of the customer where they'll be much more inclined to go forward. The third form of risk is the transition risk. That is, what is it going to take to implement or realize the value of this solution? This is the thing that most salespeople tend to forget. That is, every buyer, when they're looking at your solution, has to move from where they are today to some new way of doing things based on your solution. Well, what are all those transitions? Do they have to educate people? How long is it going to take to install? Does it have to integrate with other things, inside the organization, operationally, or physically inside the organization, or whoever is making the buying decision? What are all the various transition risks? And so if we can create a clear plan or show them how we will implement this solution, or enable them to implement it in a way that is going to help them to see value, then they will mitigate those perceptions of risk. So if you look at all 3 of these forms of risk, and I look at that in terms of the collaboration plan, you'll notice that all of the items here are designed to address those 3 forms of risk. That is, we might talk to various people here and help them to visualize how our solution will work so they can deal with the operational risk. We might agree on what the success criteria are here in terms of what the value impact might be. We might talk to some people in the organization, talk about implementation. I've noticed here in this example, we have an implementation plan to deal with the transitional risks. So when you're suggesting a collaboration plan, bear those 3 types of risk in mind, and then you can create tasks that are part of the collaboration plan that will enable you to overcome those perceptions of risk. I'm going to step through this pretty quickly in the interest of time. Once we have a collaboration plan in place and we are addressing all of the different issues that the customer needs to evaluate in terms of the potential risk of realizing the value or success of a solution, we ultimately will get to a point where we have to negotiate and close. And negotiation and closing, quite candidly, most salespeople are not very well equipped to know how to negotiate, do those final discussions and negotiations and close. And so we want to share with you a very simple tool that really only takes a short amount of time, even just a few minutes, to help salespeople think through, before I actually enter into a final negotiation, do I have all of the pieces that I need in order to do that successfully? And it really consists of three parts. Let me walk through this with you. First of all, is it closable today? Do we have enough information shared with the customer so that we can come to the table together and actually agree to close or make a purchase decision today? And some of the criteria that we would recommend to you is, number one, do we have access to someone with influence and authority that will be making the decision, right? Do we have access to the person who has enough power to actually make the buying decision? That's the first criteria. Secondly, do they understand the value that we'll be delivering to them? Now, if we've done our collaboration plan and we've addressed the issue of financial value, we've done a good job in our conversations with them to quantify the value, and they understand that, then we can have make sure they understand the payback or the return that they may get for this investment. Have they completed all of the approvals that they need to make this decision? If it's a complex solution, there may be legal approvals or technical approvals or administrative or operational kinds of reviews that are necessary. Again, this should be part of our collaboration plan to make sure that we connect with each of those people and make sure that they have approved so they can move forward with a purchase decision. Have they done all of the collaboration steps or the next steps that we've identified? Have they completed those to the level that we can now make a purchase decision, or are there still some outstanding things that need to happen? And also, we do think it's important that the prospect or the potential buyer knows the cost in advance of a final negotiation. They should have an idea of what they're expected to spend so that they can evaluate that relative to the value they might be receiving, and also socialize that internally. The final negotiation is not the best place to reveal the price for your product, because then they need to make a decision immediately, and it's very difficult for them to do that. So if the answers to those questions are yes, then you can move forward with a close. If you do have some outstanding items here that need to be addressed, then we would recommend you deal with those first. The other thing that is very useful is for sellers to evaluate or to have ready a number of stands, or that is statements that they can make to deflect requests for concessions or discounts. These are simple statements that have to do with various elements of the value of your solution. And if you have those statements ready, then you can use those to deflect requests for concessions. So for example, let's say we have a customer who says, well, I would like to go forward with this decision, but I need a deeper discount. I need 10% lower price than what you're offering. One way to deal with that is to use one of the stands and to say, well, our mutually agreed upon plan shows that the kickoff of this project is starting the week of June the 15th. Is this issue worth the delay in delaying the benefits that you will receive? Right? And I can use these stands for any objection that they may have. It's a way to delegate, to bring it back to the value of the solution in a way that the customer realizes that, in order for them to get to that desired solution, they need to, dispense with this particular objection. But at some point, you're going to have to make some concessions here. And so if you can do some planning in advance to determine what are some things that we would like to get in exchange for a concession, in exchange for something that might be of value to the customer. And if I can evaluate that in things that are relatively low cost to me and my organization, but valuable to the customer, and also vice versa, then I can use that as a way to provide some kinds of concessions that aren't specifically about price. So for example, What if we could extend the term of the contract from 1 year to 3 to 4 years? Would that be valuable to us? Yes, it would. It would be significantly valuable, and it might be relatively easy for the customer to make that decision. And in exchange, why don't we say, well, we know that you're concerned about implementing this solution, so we'll provide you with some additional training. That's lower value to, that's lower cost to us, but highly valuable to them. And it isn't necessarily about making a price concession. So doing a little planning in advance around the things that we would like to get in exchange for some things that we are willing to give up that aren't just necessarily about cutting the price can be very valuable. And of course, we also want to know when to walk away from a negotiation. And so there are certain things that aren't negotiable. We should bear those in mind as well. If you can do just a few minutes of planning before you have that final negotiation discussion to evaluate, is it closable today? What are some stands I can use to deflect concessions? And then have a list of equal exchanges of value in terms of gets and gives other than cutting price, then I can have much more effective negotiations and I can preserve my margins in that business. Let me turn it over to my friend Sandeep here, and he can discuss the last concept that we wanted to talk today in this masterclass, which is opportunity qualification. So Sandeep.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah. A typical salesperson will be working on several opportunities at the same time. And sometimes it becomes difficult to decide which ones to prioritize and what should be your course of action. Sometimes our judgment becomes a little biased and we continue to spend energy, let's say, on some opportunities, even where there seems to be very little potential, or conversely, spend less time on some opportunity which is ripe for the picking, right? So here is a simple formula. And this formula has 6 components. It will help you to determine if both the initial opportunity engagement and also further engagement with a potential buyer is warranted or not. So like Tim was saying, when is the right time to walk away in case, this formula does not give a very good result. So it's a product of 6 factors. Let's quickly go through each one of them. The first is pain. So has the buyer admitted some problem, some critical business issue or missed opportunity that needs to be addressed? The second is power. Do I know anyone with influence and authority in the organization? Do I have access to them? And can I influence them? The third is vision. So is there a shared common vision with all the stakeholders? And can I provide a highly differentiated aspect of that vision through my capabilities? Okay. The fourth is value. Have we quantified the value of the pain and the value of the proposed solution? Does the value outweigh the pain? And does the buyer agree that there is enough value to take action? That's around value. Collaborate is obviously to mutually agreed action plan. Do we have, is the buyer actively engaging in the direction towards a purchase decision? So that's collaboration. And finally, and not the least, is compelling reason to act. Is there a time-bound event that is driving a purchase decision? Or are there any potential negative implications, like Tim was mentioning, of delaying a particular decision? Okay, so you put a score to all of them. Can we go to the next slide? Yes. And if you look, it starts with a 0 from outside, and the more you score, it's a spider graph. So the higher is the score, you move towards the closure. Right. And this also helps to have those meetings and also the review session with your boss in case your manager is asking you, what is this opportunity? Where are you in this opportunity? And you see, they're very clearly, the points are given from 0 to 5, how you mark your strength of sale for that particular opportunity. I think that's all for now. Yeah. Tim, over to you.
Yes, Sandeep, thank you for that quick evaluation. We would encourage everyone to use the strength of sale check to apply to your own opportunities. That criteria is based on buyer behavior. So they're either doing it or they're not. It's a fairly objective way of looking at how you're progressing towards a sale. And then we'll also tell you what actions we need to take as salespeople to be able to make progress and move them towards a decision. So it's a very powerful tool. So that brings us to the end of this masterclass. Sorry about the technical glitch and the delay of getting reconnected, but thank you for joining us today. We hope you found some useful ideas that you can apply to your own situation. If you'd like to know more about solution selling and how to apply them to a higher level of mastery, feel free to connect with Imarticus, and they will be happy to talk about how they can make that a possibility for your own organization. So with that, I think we will close out. Suresh, anyone else with any final words before we leave the session today?
Absolutely. I think, thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much, Sandeep. I guess this masterclass, as I said, is just about an hour, 15 minutes or hour, 20 minutes to kind of absorb as much as we can. We deeply appreciate participants who have joined us and patiently going through that. But I guess the tools, the methods, the overall concept, I hope you're able to gain as much as possible. But again, this is just an hour and a half. These workshops can go all the way from 4 hours to 8 hours to 16 hours. It's been great by Tim and Sandeep to kind of condense that to the best of abilities to kind of put that into 1.5 hours. But I sincerely request if you all, if you think there is something that has been useful for you and you want to take it back to your respective workplace, I think that's something that would be a great start. It's not just about being part of a webinar on learning something. I think it's application-based learning is something that we'll be very, very focused on. And that could be very well specific to your industry that you cater to. And I think that would be a huge value add for all of us. So please do reach out to Subela, Pankaj, Savan, who is part of Imarticus group here. In case you think you want to have further conversations and discussions about this particular workshop, feel free to do that. Anybody else?
No, thank you, Suresh. We very much appreciate it. I just want to say good luck and good selling. Thank you, Sandeep, for helping me with this today as well.
Pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.